The unsung hero of filmmaking is very good scheduling.
Welcome to Groovy Movies. My name is Lily Austin.
And my name's James Brailsford. Hello.
Hello, and welcome to our final episode of Series 5. Hey,
Hey, woo, we made it. Series 5,
Series
crikey.
5.
Okay.
I feel proud of that.
Yeah, well, go us, bloody hell. Yeah, anyway. Yes, season 5, and I thought it had been a while, or it feels like it's been a while since we dipped our toes into a common through line of this podcast, which is a film by Christopher Nolan.
In my head, I was thinking Christopher Tennant, like that's his name. But maybe that's some unconscious desire to actually watch that film. One day we'll be talking about that.
One day. When
Listeners.
it's next on re-release on IMAX, that's the only way I would say we go see that film.
Okay, love that. Let's do it. It's a date. But this week we are not talking about that. We are talking about Christopher Nolan's first ever movie. Is that correct, James?
That is correct. However, I can give you, throughout the course of the podcast, I'll give you one solid link between Tenet and his very first film.
Okay, intriguing.
Which is this one film.
Intriguing. So his first film, it's called Following. It was made in 1998, and it's definitely his lowest budget film, right, James?
Oh, yeah, I mean, by far, it's according to all legend, it's a £6,000 production film, so beyond low budget, it's a wing and a prayer kind of budget, really.
Yeah. And I mean, you may not have heard about it because it's, as we said, a lower budget movie. It's only 70 minutes, so it kind of is almost a short film, I would say. It's like touching on that kind of
I would agree with you as well. It's like, it's not quite there as a feature, but because I think everybody thinks that his first film is Memento, and it's not. That's actually his second film. If Memento were truly his debut film, then it would be one of the best debut films by a new director for sure. But this is more the traditional way of how it works. Is that your first film doesn't set the world on fire, but what it does do, it gets you your second film that sets the world on fire. And that was a classic. I mean, looking back at Christopher Nolan's career, it's almost like the ideal what happened as a young filmmaker / and he didn't go to film school, but as a young filmmaker enthusiast. This is the golden ticket. This is where it all works out, where you struggle. You do the low-budget film that maybe isn't that great, but it gets your foot in the door. Then once you've got your foot in the door, then you execute your plan and you take over the cinematic universe, and it's all worked out for him.
Yeah, I mean, it really has. Okay, I'm intrigued. I want to know a little bit more about his backstory, picking up on the fact that he didn't go to film school. I mean, as many directors didn't, but still, I'm interested in that. But before we get there, shall we do a little plot summary? Should we talk about the content of the movie?
Yes, absolutely.
Great, I'm leaving that to you as I normally do.
Oh, God damn it.
Well, I wrote a log line. I can give us that if that helps.
No. So, what is the synopsis? It follows a writer who, and in the course of him getting inspiration for his writing, he decides to just start following strangers who aren't aware that he's following them. And in the process of doing that, he follows somebody who it turns out is a burglar. So he gets sucked into his world, but then through many twists and very film noirish twists and turns, people are being double-crossed, being played, things aren't what it initially seemed, and all that kind of stuff. So, and there's a femme fatale kind of character who gets involved with the plot. It's kind of got gangsters, it's got guns, it's got money, it's got a bit of robbery, petty theft, all the hallmarks of film noir are there, I would say.
Yeah, I was going to say very film noir. It's filmed in black and white, and the protagonist, played by Jeremy Theobald, his title in the credits is The Young Man. And similarly, Lucy Russell, who plays the sort of femme fatale character, is called The Blonde. So most of the characters aren't named.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Sorry, I think I might even give my Tenet link a bit earlier. I'll tease the Tenet link. In Tenet, the main character doesn't have a name. He's only listed in the credits as the protagonist. So in his very first film, we don't have character names. We have archetypes. And in Tenet, we have another archetype. We'll get back to the other link a little later, just to keep you listening. Engagement.
I love that. So is that what I was going to say? What is that about? It's about invoking an archetype rather than a specific character. That's the notion, I guess.
Yeah, and I think what's fascinating about this film is just to see how many of like his Christopher Nolan's preconceptions, interests, or his themes, his explorations. So for Christopher Nolan, he has many pros and cons, but one of the things you could say, he's not the greatest for giving real depth to characters. Characters are often in his films archetypes. They're often there to serve the purpose of a bigger story, of the spectacle, of the overall themes of the film. So maybe individual characters can be boiled down to the man, the protagonist,
Yeah, that's true. That's definitely here in this. Yeah, I will say it's like it's a very interesting film to watch if you are familiar with Christopher Nolan's.
Yeah.
What's the word we always say? Oeuvre.
Oeuvre, Lily. Oeuvre, Lily. Come on, gee whiz.
As most people are, I would say it's worth watching just to get a sense of the fact that these things he was interested in, he's been interested in throughout his career, which I find, I think often women writers, women filmmakers can be criticized for that, but all artists do that, There are things we're interested in and we'll keep, if you're an accomplished artist or filmmaker, whatever your like format, your mode, you can keep going back to these same themes, but looking at them from different directions or exploring different aspects of it, and it's still always interesting,
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I certainly think this is by far his weakest film, but then it's almost not fair to compare them to his other films, which were essentially properly budgeted, or at least had a decent budget, had a crew. This was a ragtag band where Christopher Nolan shot, edited, directed, produced he's a one-man band, did the sound in a few occasions, so. But it's certainly very interesting to see how much of his interests are just there from the very beginning, and just what's happened as he's matured as a filmmaker, the way that he explores those is become more sophisticated. So, for example, the number one thing that I think it goes through Christopher Nolan's work is his exploration of time. And his interest in telling stories non-linear. So non-linear and the manipulation of time. And that's right there in Following. And I don't know how much that was something he'd been considering beforehand, or just something that through the process of making this film, because it does make a story more interesting. If you can tell it successfully out of order, it makes the story kind of seem to have more twists and turns in it. So I don't know if he stumbled across that and carried on exploring it, because I will say that Following definitely seems like a dry run or a dress rehearsal for Memento. It does feel like Memento took all the things he was kind of playing with in Following and just kind of perfected them.
For me, if you recall, like I enjoyed Memento, but I have to say the repetition got a little bit tiresome for me. And actually in Following, like I wouldn't say it's like, I wouldn't say I enjoyed it more. Certainly not. Like obviously, yeah, it is clearly like a first film that's kind of figuring things out. But I actually found the use of the non-linear in Following kind of a bit more effective and more interesting because I actually, for some reason, even though I should have known it's Christopher Nolan, I didn't quite clock it immediately. And then once you do, and you start realizing, oh, these shots that we saw earlier on, they actually mean something. They're not just kind of like setting a scene. They're going to come back to later. It started making me like reassess what's coming, and ultimately made the twist at the end quite, I think, work pretty well for what is. Yeah, kind of essentially like a short film. I feel like often it's hard to like build to real drama and have a successful twist when you haven't like had as much to like build on and work with when you're making a short film. But I think it works very well in this.
Yeah, no, I do think, the use of non-linear storytelling is a bit more interesting in this. And also, when I was watching it, I was thinking, oh my God, Christopher Nolan, even back then, he was a master. Say what you want about Christopher Nolan, many pros and cons, but one thing you cannot take away from him, he's an excellent scheduler. He knows how to schedule a shoot, right? Because in the film that we watched, in Following, the character invariably either has long hair or short hair, and there's scenes where the character revisits the same location with long hair and short hair. You just think, oh my God, you must have had to schedule that in advance, because they've even got the scene where Jeremy Theobald cuts his hair off on camera, where you've only got one take of that, and they must have figured out where they need to be at what time. Totally boring bit of filmmaking, but you watch that thinking, Jesus Christ, to keep track of, do I need his hair shaved or not shaved for this scene, and when are we going to shoot it in that case? Oh, bloody hell. Oh.
That's so true. Yeah, you've got Yeah, he's an
It's
excellent
like
producer.
The unsung hero of filmmaking is very good scheduling.
It's very true. And that part of it is very good because if I'm honest, I didn't notice the difference in hair and the difference in appearance.
I didn't
initially.
until he cut his hair, and then it kind of all...
Exactly. And I think that, but that's partly, I was thinking, like, if this was a woman character and her hair had changed, I would notice. If her clothes changed quite dramatically, I would notice. But there's something about the kind of, he's already quite an anonymous character that you just don't take it in as much. And I think that really works in the story because, you don't clock it until he cuts his hair. And then again, it's like, and still a comment is made about how he had to dress a bit better to he had to dress a bit sharper for whatever reason, because as part of the burglary, I forget the reason, but you then go back and are like, and that's a fun thing. I think that's what makes it a very enjoyable film is that when you're watching it and it's making you think back over what you've just seen, it's like a more active way of watching a film than just letting it like, you being like fed the story. You're being really made to work and figure it out and find the joins, and that's fun.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I like non-linear storytelling. I just think that when it's done well, which is the hard thing, is to kind of to make the audience kind of go along with it. And even if maybe they're confused at first or don't spot it, when it starts to make sense, you go along with it. I think that energizes the story because it does make the audience have to be more active when they watch a film. I mean, like Oppenheimer, if you miss like a scene in Oppenheimer because it's all so interconnected, it's hard to keep up because that's, again, another film that explores non-linear time. But yeah, it's interesting as well to see how many different ways he can explore this notion of non-linear storytelling because throughout his films, we look at, in Memento, the non-linear storytelling is more a reflection of the character's memory or the memory loss, right? You can have non-linear storytelling, like, for example, in Batman Begins, where it's just a bit more hopping around different locations, so we're not really playing with the form of storytelling, but we are just telling different stories in different locations. And then we get to something like, with Dunkirk, you see, I was not too excited about Dunkirk when I heard about it, because war movie, come on, Chris. Then when you watch it, of course, it's a Christopher Nolan war movie, so it's got twisty-timey, like, that's his most sophisticated exploration of time manipulation in the editing process, because in that film, you got 3 different time periods. One story set over a week, one set over a day, and one set over an hour, but they're all intercut, and you feel like it's all happening at once, a simultaneous action in 90 minutes. But that's like the most sophisticated editing I've ever seen as far as like manipulating time for an audience. And then you get to Tenet, and this time the actual story is about time that's non-linear, that's going forwards and backwards. So he's now taking it out of the realm of what you do as an editor, and now the actual narrative is all exploring time. Anyway, so he just keeps going over that. And then Inception, of course, it's time, but looked at through the lens of being in dreams and how dream affects your perception of time, so all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I can't decide which I prefer. Like, I sort of think that I lean towards preferring when it's not part of the story. Like, it serves the story, like in Dunkirk and like in Following, but it's not. It just helps tell the story rather than being part of it. For some reason, I don't find that as interesting maybe because it's just getting a bit too kind of complicated, philosophical, like maybe it's just a bit too high-minded for me.
Because Tenet is the most Christopher Nolan film of all of his films, for better and definitely for worse, right? Because it is literally about a non-linear time, but as part of the plot, it's like it's an exploration of free will versus determinism. It gets like,
oh God,
as an action film.
Okay. God, I feel bad. Wait, I need to see this movie. I need to. Okay, but bringing it back to Following, let's talk about the production because I don't know. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on how they went about making this film as someone who's made films on a small budget.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, I think the lessons you can learn from even just studying the craft and the approach that Christopher Nolan has, even if you don't like his films or the way the characters or the things he explores, just taking some of his just common sense filmmaking techniques and applying them to your own work, I think will make almost any student filmmakers or even early years filmmakers works better. What's interesting as well is that the techniques that he developed as a young filmmaker, he still applies now to his big budget films. I mean, the common thing I keep seeing come up in a lot of interviews with cast who've worked for him, they say it's like working on a low budget film, working on one of his big budget films, because the way he runs a set, he gets every dollar on screen. So making this film, everyone had a full-time job, everyone had day jobs. So when do you shoot? Well, you shoot at the weekends. But, you can't shoot an entire feature film in a weekend. No, you can't. Right, then break it down into multiple weekends. Okay, there you go. That's how that's how you schedule it. If that's what you've got, you've got to commit some time to it, so you do it the weekend. So he said, like, every weekend for, in my head, it's a year, but it might be 6 months.
Yes. Oh, okay. No. Well, okay. I have here in my notes, filming took place on Saturdays for 3 to 4 months.
Right.
Him shooting 15 minutes of footage every day.
Again, 15 minutes sounds a lot to shoot, but maybe a reel of film. But
that's a lot to shoot.
Yeah, especially shooting on film, especially with a small crew. But it's possible. It's possible. Maybe 50 minutes a weekend over 2 days.
Well, I was interested to hear that they only shot like 1 or 2 takes, right? They did loads of rehearsing and then shooting because Nolan was paying for the camera film himself.
Yeah, because shooting on film is a discipline, and I think, because I teach at the film school in Manchester, is that students shoot on digital all the time, and so there's an entire aspect of filmmaking that has disappeared due to the switch to digital, which is it costs nothing to do a take. You just shout action, press record, it goes onto a card, and yes, you need a hard drive or some kind of storage, but that's so low cost per hour. And then you shoot on film, and every 10 minutes you've got to change the film reel. Every 10 minutes, that's about 150 to 200 quid just for the reel of film. Then there's the 70 quid to process it, and then there's the transfer. So that's just for 10 minutes. So the barrier to entry for shooting on film is so high because of just the costs involved. So that means as a young filmmaker, what you're trying to do, you're trying to make your film look as professional as possible, but you don't have the cash. So what that means is you've got to shoot as few takes as possible. So you rehearse as much as possible to make sure that you don't make mistakes during the take, and then you do 1 or 2 takes and you move on.
Yeah, gosh. I mean, I thought the acting was a little... What did you think?
Yeah.
I think they did a good job, but it was a little... But I couldn't quite tell if that was in part because, as we've just discussed, like Christopher Nolan isn't quite so good at like establishing like the depth of an individual character and who they are, which I can imagine is quite challenging for especially like a new actor to like find who that person is.
The performances weren't great, and Jeremy Theobald, just to give it some kind of context, he was like a friend and collaborator of Christopher Nolan, and for a couple of years, Christopher Nolan went to University College London. He studied English at university, so he did not go to film school. He did not study filmmaking, but he's got a literary background, which again, if you look at his work, he's kind of it's got a literary quality to it. But what he was the president of the Film Society at UCL, and they had access to. For a film society, they showed films, but they also had a 60mm camera that they had access to, and like a tripod and a few lights, so you could actually make short films. So he buddied up with Jeremy Theobald. I'm not quite sure how they met, but Jeremy Theobald was an aspiring actor, and so they worked together on a couple of short films. And so Jeremy Theobald, I think, funded a large part of Following from his own savings or his own money. So he's like the lead actor / the funder / the producer. So I don't think he's the strongest actor in the ensemble, and but
I think he's
he carries
pretty good,
the part.
actually. You might be right about that he's perhaps not the strongest, but I think he's quite good in that part. He fits the character, I think.
He does actually, yeah. And the thing is, Christopher Nolan does the thing that you're meant to do as an aspiring filmmaker. Right? The unwritten pact is this: everybody works for free on your no-budget, low-budget films, or even your first feature where there's no money. Everybody does it for free with the promise, or the unsaid promise, that if you, as Christopher Nolan, the director, you make it, then you bring everyone along with you, or as many people as possible. So even though... he didn't cast him in Memento, which wouldn't have made any sense. He did cast him in a speaking role in Batman Begins, so Jeremy Theobald, and also the actress who plays the femme fatale. She also has a speaking role in Batman Begins. Of course, you get a speaking role, you get more of the cheddar cheese in the residuals, because you said a line and you're being directed by the actor, so you get better money. And also, coming back to Tenet, Jeremy Theobald has a small role, is the maitre d', or he's like the receptionist at some fancy gentleman's club. But so what we have here is a little wink to Nolan fans. We have the protagonist of his latest film, called The Protagonist, meeting the protagonist of his very first film in a scene. So, a little wink there for us Nolan fans. Get it?
Easter egg.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly.
Well, I was interested in, I'll link it in the show notes. I watched an interview with Nolan about the film, and he said that the idea came to him at a time when he was living in London and was amazed by how crowded it was. And he kind of became preoccupied with the idea of what happens if someone decides to break down social norms and start just following someone, picking someone in the crowd and following them for no real reason. And around the same time that he was kind of meditating on this idea in his mind, his flat got burgled. So he said he kind of put the two things together to come up with this story, which I thought was very interesting. Him talking about part of his interest was, well, he said he was interested in the sense of violation that a burglary provokes in you, and the realization of that door is not really the thing, isn't something that actually protects you. A closed door, a locked door doesn't protect you. It's only social protocol and people not, and this like agreed shared contract that we won't burgle each other.
Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of that is a very interesting thing. And it was, I don't know, I thought that, I don't know if the burglary aspect of the film worked completely in the film itself, perhaps because so this guy, Cobb, so basically the young man meets this guy, Cobb, he follows him, and Cobb notices him following him, and Cobb basically tells him that he's a burglar. And so they start doing it together, and it becomes quite apparent that, well, the way Cobb talks about it, he is getting this sort of like philosophical, like, kick out of it by like making people aware that he's like gone through their stuff. And I don't know if it was like delivered or like explored in like the perfect way in the film, but then hearing Nolan talk about it was like, that is actually a very interesting kind of
the idea is more interesting than the execution in following, I think.
Yeah, maybe,
but
maybe.
Because as well, it's fascinating because Christopher Nolan's life essentially has, the majority of his life as an adult has been spent working at the very highest level as a filmmaker. He's not done, whereas some filmmakers may have had a different life before they got into filmmaking, so they've brought all that with them, all the shared baggage. But Christopher Nolan hasn't. And it's interesting because so his preoccupation, his life experience aren't really going to be based around like maybe extreme life events, but instead it's more his own personal musings about things, about what is time, how do we experience time. They're very general things, but that is kind of his interest that he's exploring as a filmmaker, for better or for worse. I mean, I think the criticism often levelled at me is a little bit cold and emotionless, and perhaps that's because his preoccupations are a little bit more technical based around about memory, about time, that kind of, I don't know, just that's the life, those are the things that he thinks about, and that's what he brings to his filmmaking. Yeah,
I mean, that character of Cobb is quite kind of cold, and I'm feeling that's obviously part of him that's deliberate, right? He's meant to be this sort of smooth, just like unemotional. I can see that being a little bit part of Nolan's character. Not that him as a person is like, doesn't care about people and has the capacity to burgle, but just that kind of analytical way of looking at life. But I really don't mind that about Nolan. I don't think even though obviously my favorite films are all about the feels, I don't mind someone who's doing something different if they're doing something interesting. And I think like Christopher Nolan is a very unique filmmaker, and I love how successful he is for it, because those films are really interesting and they're not like anyone else is doing. He is completely an auteur, and there aren't that many of those going these days.
There absolutely aren't. I don't think there are many, if any, that really can operate at his level and kind of essentially get Final Cut, work with $200 million budgets, make... Mostly his films are original IPs. He did the Batman trilogy, and that's really it. Oh, and I mean, Insomnia was a remake of another film, I think. So, but mostly his stuff is entirely original, or, an original approach to things. So, yeah, so he's one of the few filmmakers who can just do what he wants, but not only that, dictate how he wants his films to be showed. Like, as I often go on about, he's one of the few people who can still get film prints made of his film, because for him, as an artist, that's the best way to see his work, and he doesn't want that to disappear. So it's something that was once commonplace. You've now got pretty much Christopher Nolan clinging in there going, don't kill film entirely. So,
yeah, it's tough.
And also, you can see Following. There's many pleasures to watching Following. The film itself, it's not his strongest film, and it's rough around the edges. But if you're a Nolan fan, or you're at least interested to see where he came from, must watch. But for example, there's lots of little things you'll notice, like Cobb as a character name and a character type. Well, that's Leonardo DiCaprio's character in Inception. He's called Cobb. He's also a criminal who breaks into, who transgresses the barrier between people's private dreams and thoughts. So is it the same character? Does all Christopher Nolan's film exist in the same universe? Is it just a bunch of Nolan fans trying to find links that aren't there?
I was thinking that because I was like, this idea of breaking social norms, does that come up in his later films? And okay, that's an example of it doing so.
Yeah, the thing is, Nolan's themes and stuff, they're not that pronounced. They always are in the background a bit more than they are just make sure it's a solid, entertaining film that twists and turns. But I think anything that's a bit more layered is always never too foregrounded.
That Cobb character, he's played by a man called Alex Hoare, and I was sort of disappointed to see that he's the only one who doesn't have a Wikipedia page of his own, suggesting that he probably didn't really act again after that.
Oh, right. I thought he did have a bit of an acting career, and I certainly know that the woman who played the femme fatale character, she's gone on and done lots of stuff.
Yeah, Lucy Russell. Yeah, I recognised her as well. Maybe I'm wrong about that. No, I'm not telling a lie. He has just been in Following.
Really?
Yes. He since playing Cobb in Following, he has graduated from Princeton with a master's degree in architecture and works at a top New York architectural firm. Good for you, Alex Hoare. We love that.
That's not bad, is it? Oh my God, imagine that at the dinner party. Oh, BT Dubs, did I tell you I was in Christopher Nolan's first film? Oh my God, the bragging rights.
I love it. How chic. I love that for him. But I thought he was really, really good. I thought that despite some of the dialogue being tough to work with, he really embodied this character quite well. I was into it.
You've got to remember, for everybody involved, this is a passion project, because everybody was sacrificing their weekends to film this, I guess. So everybody's giving it their best,
Totally.
They're all turning up.
I have to also say that so the film was made, as we said, in 1998. That is a great moment aesthetically in London's history in terms of the clothing, because watching, I was like, this could have been filmed now. These clothes look classic. We talk about this a lot about, wearing suits, and certain styling choices can make a film seem timeless. And you definitely get that in this. This film feels timeless. I mean, there is this 90s sense to it also, of course. But it just, especially in black and white, it just looks beautiful.
It looks, because again, he was trying to make sure his film was timeless, even with his very first film. So put people in suits. That's just a good default. If you can't think what to do, put them in suits. And if you haven't got much money to shoot stuff, make it black and white, and make sure the story you're telling works in black and white. So make it a film noir. But then that means you don't have to worry about matching the colours from all the different lights. If you go on locations and the lighting's a bit ugly looking, probably it's not going to look that bad in black and white. It's more going to look ugly if the colours are off in colour. So lots of smart things that he did there. But watching it, I mean, 1998 was when I graduated from university, from my undergrad, and so it's when my first ever trip to London was 1998. So it just totally puts me in a time and a place. And then the other thing, some of the characters, in fact, when the protagonist first meets Cobb, he meets him in a cafe, right? And that cafe is actually the cafe that's attached to a visual effects house called Frame Store. And you can actually see the tag on the side of the cafe from an exterior. It says Frame Store, because they were actually doing post-production of the film. They were editing it in Frame Store's editing facilities, and they needed to shoot some more scenes, and so they let them shoot there. But the whole point is, that Frame Store was the place I wanted to get a job at one point, so I knew it very well. And so to suddenly see that 1998 version, the Frame Store cafe that I walked past many a time, dreaming that I might be in there, it's definitely a capsule of a time and a place for me as well.
Oh, that's so nice. I love that.
One of the pleasures of Following, I have to say, as a filmmaker, and I can strongly recommend this, is the DVD extras on Following, and also Memento, by the way. Because they're the only two films of his that he's actually recorded a DVD commentary for, so they're like gold dust. And they were both recorded at the time, so before he became too big. So they're not like retrospective commentaries. And so obviously once he got big, he, for whatever reason, probably emulating Spielberg a bit, he decided no commentaries, don't want to spoil the mystery or something.
Don't want to see behind the curtain.
Yeah, exactly. But Following, it's like watching Following is like great for new filmmakers, but also listening to that DVD commentary. That is a complete film school in a box. And the thing is, all the things he says about how he works, he still does that now. So rehearse a lot. Do sound only takes, right? So because film stock's expensive now, as you get a bigger budget, obviously that expense becomes proportionally less. But when you're shooting on IMAX film, which costs 4 times more than 35mm film, you still need to be a bit economical with it. So he actually says that the techniques I used on Following, I'm now using on big budget IMAX productions. So they would do sound only takes. They could pick up bits of dialogue, so they're not running film all the time, and they could pick up all the sound effects they needed of the different things happening in the scene. And then it meant that the soundtrack could sound a bit better. Another thing he said is he deliberately put a scene very early on in the film that had excellent quality sound. So there's a sequence, the film's framing device is the main character being interrogated by a policeman in a police station. And he said, the rest of the film, it's a lot of handheld. The sound is a bit like run and gun at times, so it's a bit ropey at times, the sound. But he said if you put a scene near the beginning of the film that was on tracks, shot as nicely as he was able to at the time, and with perfect sound, then if you start the film like that, you'll forgive it, or you won't even notice that the sound gets a bit rougher later on in the film because you've already had this nice bit. So just little ticks like that, which aren't about like what's the meaning of the film or the symbolism, but they're just very good practical how to make your film look and sound more professional.
Oh, I love that. That's a very good tip. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because once you're in the story, you don't even really notice anymore. But if you start out thinking, oh, this is a bit janky, it's not been put together so well, it's clearly very low budget. Because I knew it was obviously a low budget film, but I was kind of shook when I saw that it'd been made for, what did you say, 6,000, was it? Just insane.
6 or 7,000.
Yeah, 6,000,
yeah.
Crazy. But I was interested in. I've read that box office worldwide 126,000. So not bad. He definitely got a return on his investment. But like, was that right away? Did he get any kind of release? Or was that later on because of the Criterion Collection released it as a DVD in 2012?
I don't know the details, but my understanding is it didn't really do anything at the box office. So maybe it got a limit. I think it may have got a limited release because it wasn't the box office that got him his next film. It was the fact that he'd made this film for £6,000 and that the story was interesting. What the film worked as, it didn't work as far as launching his career to an audience. What it did do was impressed all the producers and all the production companies, and it was basically what got him Memento. And that's then what cemented him with audiences.
Right, yeah. Because I saw that it did pretty well on the festival circuit for the following year. It got a Tiger Award at the International Film Festival in Rotterdam. Best First Picture Prize at the San Francisco International Film Festival. So, not necessarily like the big film festivals, not Cannes or whatever, but enough of a buzz around it.
Yeah.
I saw that there were so many positive reviews. The New Yorker described Following as echoing a Hitchcock classic, but leaner and meaner, which I thought was quite a good kind of descriptor. There was a lot of positive buzz around him as a filmmaker at that point. So yeah, I guess that's what it's about, isn't it? Just getting a few people to recognize that you've got talent and potential.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what it was. So he said that the biggest jump for him for a filmmaker, still to this day, the biggest step up was going from Following to Memento, because he went from essentially a student filmmaker doing most things with himself or a very small team of 5 people to then suddenly you've got a crew, you've got 100 or so people on the credits, So that to him was the biggest jump, but it was Following that got him Memento, that kind of anybody watching Following could see that if this guy had a bit more money, he would definitely, it was highly likely he would deliver something very good.
Yeah, definitely. Because, like I said, it definitely looks like it was made for more than 6,000.
He's definitely a filmmaker who, I can relate to this. He wants to make something look special on screen. He wants to put the money on screen. He wants to give the audience something they haven't seen before, which is the classic thing you've got to aim for as a filmmaker. So he's from that school, and I love that. I love the idea of how much money don't I have? I've got 800 quid was one of the budgets for my short film. How good can I make it look for 800 quid? That's part and parcel of what excites me as a filmmaker, and it's clear that it excites him as well. He's how can I make it look really good on screen? Even if I've got 200 million, I want to make it look even more. I noticed with the Odyssey that he's shooting now, just the behind the scenes pictures of that, I've not seen much, but I get this feeling it's the same attitude as well. Even though it's a $250 million production, I think he's treating it like a low budget. Let's have a smallest crew possible and put it all on screen. I mean, I've been seeing some of the behind the scenes pictures, and I got to say they're looking pretty good, those sets.
Oh my God, I cannot wait to see that movie. Do you know when it comes out? I'm just trying to look that up right now.
He has the same weekend for all his films, so it'll be, I think it's July. It's 26, July. I'm going to go with like the 23rd of July, 26th.
17th of July, 2026.
Right. That's his weekend. He always has. So, but that's just been that was when Oppenheimer was released, all that kind of stuff. So that's apparently his lucky charm.
It's his lucky charm. Well, yeah, it's working for him. Okay, great. I'm happy that it's coming out next year and not the year after. What do you make of this buzz, that the rumor that maybe he'll do the next Bond movie? Do you think it's possible? Are you into the idea?
I like that. I think it's possible, and I like the idea. I just don't think it's going to happen, and I can't see it like. Like Nolan is so specific about the theatrical presentation of his films, and that's not just the stuff that I love, which is film prints and beautiful presentation at the best cinemas, but also the theatrical window. He does not want that tiny so him making a film for Amazon Studios, I can't see it happening anytime soon. But although the rumor I've heard, which has actually got me quite excited about the new Bond, Alfonso Cuarón perhaps is doing it. So the guy behind Gravity and Children of Men.
One of the Harry Potter films.
One of the Harry Potter, my favourite of the Harry Potter films.
Azkaban.
Yeah. So Nolan's been rumoured for years. He could do it. It's possible. I just don't think it will.
Because wasn't he in talks with the former kind of owners of
the Broccoli's?
The Broccoli's, thank you. Wasn't he in talks at one point to do it?
Oh, well, he's actually gone on record and said he's had meetings with Barbara Broccoli and the rest of the gang. And the stumbling block for him is he needs complete creative control, and the Broccoli's wouldn't give it. And of course, the ironic thing is there's now possibly a chance that Amazon would give him total creative control,
Yeah, that's why I'm hoping. Because honestly, for me, I tend to have it's very momentum-esque. I kind of have some amnesia whenever a Bond film comes out. And I think, oh yeah, Bond, it's like a British, classic. It's like Marmite. I'm going to go see it. It'll be fun. And then I realize no, these are terrible movies, really boring and not good dialogue, and just not for me. Like action in general isn't really my thing. And so I need it to I have a bit more about it to make it worth it. And for me, one of the only things that can make me want to see a Bond movie would be Christopher Nolan. I'd be running to see that movie.
Yeah, I'd be very excited, and it's clearly something that he wants to do. I mean, he's kind of made his own riffs on Bond films with Tenet and with Inception. They're both kind of Bond films to a degree. But yeah, I remember you texted me after you came out to see No Time to Die, and you're like, you said, I keep forgetting that these just aren't my type of thing.
I know, and I'd gone to see it in the IMAX.
I know. You did your duty. Really. You gave it your best shot.
Oh, Jesus Christ, they're rubbish. But the old ones I have some time for. They're pretty charming and cute. We'll have to do another Bond film nearer the time of the release. I think it's worth revisiting.
Apparently Amazon are speeding things through, so it could be next year, which I don't know.
I don't know about.
Sounds good.
Yeah, no. All right, well, just to bring it back to Following, James, Letterboxd review. What would you give Following out of 5?
I'm going to give it a 2, because it's it'd be a push to say it's more than a 2, and the 2 is because it's a cracking little film, but it's totally rough around the edges. It's probably technically one of the rougher films we've reviewed, but then it was Christopher Nolan, his wife to be Emma Thompson, and a bunch of actors running around London with no money for 3 to 6 months. So you got to give it up. But the main thing to me is to see where he came from. When you're about to watch The Odyssey, this $250 million blockbuster epic, to see, well, where did this particular filmmaker, where did he start? So it's fascinating from that.
I agree. 2 seems very harsh, though. 2 stars is usually when a film's terrible.
I know. I was thinking that before we started recording, but then to give it 3 feels like too much. Is it 2.5 then?
I'm giving it 3, so we'll settle on 2.5. And guys, if you want to see our other ratings, you can check out our Letterboxd. It's Groovy Movies Pod. Okay.
Again,
I feel
I
a bit
think for me,
guilty.
it's the same thing I keep saying about these scores. Like, I've got other Nolan films I like a lot more, so I need to make those count.
I know, but I hear what you're saying, but it's not this isn't a ranking of Nolan. This is like Letterboxd. You know what I mean?
What?
This is like
I
all the
don't know if
movies.
what
This
does-
is all the movies in the world.
Ah, right.
So you're putting
Yeah.
following in the same category as, say, The Intern. No offense to Robert De Niro.
Oh no! Now you've put it like that, Lily. Yeah, okay, yeah. Maybe I need to. Okay, I'll definitely go 2.5 then.
I think
no contest.
I think it's a 3.
Okay.
Okay, fine. But we'll do 2.5. 2.5, fine. But just
No,
guys,
I
remember
feel,
bear
but
that in mind.
why am I the Christopher Nolan fan?
Exactly.
The one who's marking him down.
That's what I'm baffled by, because yeah, I didn't. It's definitely his weakest movie, of course, but I don't know. It's hard. I can never disconnect from the. I'm one of the. I can't take it away from the context, and like tiny budget first film. Got a lot out of those actors, okay, even though some of the acting is a little bit questionable. And I mean, what a story. We barely even talked about it, but guys, it's worth watching for a juicy twist at the end. It's like, that's pretty great. I feel like it's the hardest thing in the world to pull off a twist, and you're in your very first film.
Absolutely.
That's some good script writing.
Pulled it off in the first film, and then he kind of got another twist that he pulled off in the second film. So he did a couple of good twist films. However, he was very fortunate. Unlike M. Night Shyamalan, he did not get labelled as the twist director, so he's managed to escape that one.
That's true. I wonder how he got away with that. He's lucky. He's a lucky one.
Yeah,
that puts a lot of
he was
pressure.
close there. I think it's because his follow-up to Memento was a remake, so it wasn't one of his own films, and it doesn't really have a twist. So I think the fact that his third film just swerved the twist ending got him out of that. If he'd have done a third one in a row, he would have been Mr. Twist.
Okay, great. Well, to finish up, James, as it is our final episode of the series, I thought it would be nice to finish up with a little game. I'm clearly getting into them, as I did one last week, which I admit was not the most successful thing in the world. So I'm hoping this might work a bit better. But we spotted last week that without really being conscious of it, we've done 3 films this series with 7 in the title. We did 7 Samurai, we did 7 Brides, 7 Brothers. So it got me thinking, I wonder what other 7 movies that are out there. Don't say any yet, because that's the game. I'm going to play you a clip from a movie, and I want you to tell me.
You've got clips.
I've got
wow.
clips, baby. And you have to tell me what the film is, and clue, it's got 7 in the title.
You see, okay, great. I'm I can't. Okay, right.
Yeah, some will be trickier than others.
I can't even think of any films that have got 7 in the title apart from the 3 we just discussed.
Yeah, okay, good. Well, then let's see how this goes. Maybe it's going to be
7 Days of the Condor.
Okay, that is not one of them, so I'll allow you for that guess. But don't guess any more. What if you get one? Okay, here we go.
I think he just craved a little affection. A sense of being loved and needed and wanted.
That's a very interesting point of view.
Oh, do you feel the breeze from the subway? Isn't it delicious?
The 7-Year Itch.
Yes, way! Well
Whoa,
done.
I didn't think I was going to get that, and then suddenly I was like, "That's Marilyn Monroe." It's Marilyn Monroe. That was it was the voice. That's how I got. Whoa, okay, cool.
Iconic voice, iconic film. Yeah, chose that moment where the subway breeze lifts up her dress. Which, to be honest, because it's such a motif, right?
Yeah.
I imagined it to be a bit more of a thing, but it's kind of subtle.
Same, like when I first saw it, I was like, oh, it's a little throwaway moment. Whereas because it's become this iconic picture, you imagine it has much more weight and meaning in the film.
Yeah, and I don't mean to be crude, but you don't even see her knickers.
Lily Austin, what do you go to the cinema for?
I'm just saying, like, you see statues of her, like, holding down her skirt. You don't even see her actually holding down the dress. You just see her kind of her feet almost. Okay, anyway.
Yeah.
Moving on. Okay, that was kind of a fairly easy one.
An easy one?
Well, not. I've got an easier one for you, but I'll save that. Okay, here we go. This one might be a bit challenging. I don't know if you've seen it, but I'm probably some of our listeners will.
Take this. Take it. You're gonna start this car, and you're gonna go. This is real, and this is gonna be your new life. Do you understand?
Yeah. Okay, so first of all, do you recognize the male voice? Because he's a very well-known actor.
Not really.
I'll give you a clue. Will Smith. That was Will Smith. Any idea of what that movie could be? I think we can tell it's rather serious from that music and the way the woman is crying.
Yeah. I mean, a film with 7 in it with Will Smith. Mm-hmm.
Do you give up?
I think I give up.
Okay, that one was a tricky one. If you've not seen it, and to be honest, I've seen it and I wouldn't have thought of it, but that is 2008's £7. Have you seen that movie?
Oh, yeah, no, never would have got it, no.
I've got to tell you, at the time, I watched that as a teenager, and I seem to remember thinking, I was shown it by a boyfriend who thought it was, the highest form of cinema, and I thought it was, not bad, but trying to find a clip from it, I was like, oh, God, this is, a little bit, mawkish, over-the-top, melodramatic, but no offense to Will Smith. I won't give you this. I don't want to spoil it for anyone, and it's a film that's kind of got a lot of twists and turns, but I don't know, mawkish, over the top, but it's called £7, so there we go. It was definitely from Will Smith's I'm a serious actor era.
Yes, yeah.
Which
the Hancock era.
Was that? I never saw that. Is that a serious movie? I thought it was an action movie.
It's an action movie, but it's two films. You can tell it's two films that have just been welded together, and tonally they don't match. One of them is a film about a recovering alcoholic who happens to be a superhero, and it's all dealing with alcoholism, right? And the fallout that can have on your family. And the other film is a superhero action knockabout breezy comedy. Yeah, it's like.
Oh my God. Okay. Fascinating. Yeah. The other one I was thinking was The Pursuit of Happiness. Gosh, all these films, I think they were all him trying to get an Oscar, but unfortunately he doesn't have a great instinct for what is Oscar worthy. But hey, as we all remember, he did get one.
He did eventually. Get an Oscar.
Okay. So you ready for another?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to give you another challenging one.
You ever shoot a guy in his eyeball? I stabbed a guy in his ear once, ice pick. Right in his fucking ear.
Yeah, see, that'd be a different subject. That'd be ears.
7 Psychopaths.
Impressive. You got that right away.
I had that one lined up. I just thought, oh, shit. As soon as I hear a gangster kind of dialogue, 7 Psychopaths.
Perfect. I've not seen that. I think we should do it for the podcast.
I have seen it. It's all right. Yeah, it's all right,
Okay, you don't sound super impressed.
No, it's worth a watch. It's worth a watch. It's no In Bruges, but it's worth a watch.
Okay, maybe we should do In Bruges then. Okay, we'll discuss this offline. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to give you an easier one now.
Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?
Oh, I like what you've done there, Lily. I like it. This is current day, but also the quiz. It's Snow White and the 7 magical creatures. Is that what it is? No, it's not.
Excuse me, no. I because I think that one is just called Snow White.
Snow White.
So we're going old school. That is the original Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs, which it was amazing grabbing that clip because it's one of the very first scenes of the film, and I suddenly was taken back. I'm 4 years old. I'm in the cinema. I'm absolutely terrified. I keep telling my mum I need the loo just because I want to leave the cinema. It's terrifying. But that did become my favorite film for a long time. God, I love the thrill.
So I'm guessing the original animation doesn't have a song and dance sequence featuring the evil stepmother, or?
Yeah. You know what? I don't think so. There's Snow White who sings about. One day her prince will come, and he chips in at some point and sings too. And then there's the dwarfs, but I don't think I remember the Snow White ever having a song, which is a shame.
Well, apparently she has a barnstorming showstopper in this remake, so we'll see.
Oh God,
when that comes on Disney Plus.
See, I'm always trying to get that Snow White movie back in our conversation. You're I feel like that's your Roman Empire the last couple of years.
It has been. It's been so funny because some of the YouTubers I follow, they're like, this is the last video we're ever going to do on Snow White. Can you believe it's been almost 3 years we've been talking about this? It's like, what am I going to do with myself now? It's done.
But will you ever go see it?
I'll probably see. What I'd like to challenge you to do, right, is ideally, this will be the ideal way to watch it, right, is you and we both have it on Disney Plus, and we press play at the same time, and whoever bails out first loses. So the one who makes it the furthest through this remake is the winner.
Oh my God. Okay. Mission challenge accepted. Let's do it. All right. I'll finish up with one final one for you to round this little game out. You've done pretty well, I think. Okay, here we go.
Captain, we have company. 4 cars inbound. Goodbye. Bye. Oh, shit.
I mean, that's an insane action film, and it almost has a Transformers noise in it, like transforming. Oh, okay.
You're in the right track. So, like, what were the sounds that you were hearing early on?
Like car mechanical-y type things.
Yes, cars. That is a clue.
Oh, Fast and Furious 7.
Yeah, you got it. Well done.
Thanks. Oh my God.
I had to. I couldn't not, you know.
Is that the first time you've ever watched any Fast and Furious film, is getting that clip?
I'm not sure. I feel like there's a distinct possibility. In my younger days, I went to see the first Fast and Furious, but I don't think it's hugely likely. I do sometimes forget what I've seen, so I'm not sure, but I think possibly not. But I mean that is a shortcoming of mine, and I would be willing to, like, you know, if we want to hit the masses, if we want to reach bigger audiences, James, we've got to start looking past our own interests, I think. So, listeners, if you have any suggestions, films you want us to talk about in our next series, please do let us know.
Which of the Fast and the Furious, if we had to watch one Fast and Furious film, which one would it be? I hear that the 4th or the 5th one are the best ones to watch, but, you know, if we are going to watch one.
Yeah, that's a good shot. Yeah, please, just give us one. Just one. We can survive that. All right, great. Well, thank you guys for listening to another series of Groovy Movies.
Well done. Thank you. We appreciate everybody who's tuning in and listening to us. Thank you so much. And for those who've been around for the journey, I appreciate your support.
Yeah, we do. It's amazing. And thank you also, you know, people interacting on social media. We love to hear from you. Instagram, we're on TikTok now as well, and YouTube. So yeah, it's really nice. We're everywhere. And it's been great having that interaction with our listeners. So thank you for all your support. And we will be back in a couple of months, post honeymoon for me. James, what are you up to in the next couple of months?
Well, I've got my PG cert to do. My deadline for the first year is August, so I will be head down doing PG cert stuff.
Exactly, but we're going to come back in the summer, and we'll bring you some summer movies, and yeah, give us some recommendations, and we'll see what we can do.
Yes, let us know what you think we haven't watched yet and that we should be discussing. But and if you can, of course, leave us a like or a nice review. It all helps get the podcast out to a larger audience.
All right, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Groovy Movies is produced and edited by us, Lily Austin and James Brailsford. And James also produced the theme music.
Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Groovy Movies Pod, or email us groovymoviespod@gmail.com.
For more information about the films discussed, check out the show notes.